My experience in the United States has been a little bit varied. I started out working in the U.S. court system in Washington, D.C., in their domestic violence and sexual assault unit there. So I saw a lot of diversity in the people we served in that urban community, and then kind of continued in that work and found myself looking to be more involved in policy and having more of an impact with vulnerable communities, less so on that day-to-day court basis and more so on the broader scheme of things. The vulnerable communities I then started to focus on was largely focused on violence against women and children. I helped do some legislation drafting and recommendations on the national agenda on violence against women, specifically looking at violence all across multiple sectors. I think my sectors were corrections, the corrections and incarcerations sector, the media and sports sectors, looking at how sports and coaching can impact violence and mitigate violence and prevention. And also looking at just general cultural change, which is the biggest challenge working with vulnerable populations, is changing that narrative on a cultural level. I would say the populations that was most vulnerable that I worked with within the United States were refugees who I helped resettle, coming largely so as I was served as the director for refugee resettlement at Catholic Charities in the state of Maine. Our largest population that we were resettling at the time were coming from Somalia. So we were resettling people who had been living in refugee camps for 10 years, waiting for their resettlement in the United States. And as a population, they had a host of needs. So when they came to the United States, they were coming with one bag of clothes, typically. They didn't have any items. They'd never seen snow. Maine is a very cold place. So you have people who have never been in a very cold climate arriving with sandals and a hijab and just very lightweight clothes and not prepared for Maine winters. So we were quickly working to help resettle them, providing them with proper clothing, food and housing and shelter to get them settled immediately, and then help them adapt and learn the language as they could and help them find employment, help support their kiddos in school, and kind of help with that ongoing cultural adjustment that happens between the experience that they've lived for so long and then the U.S. experience, which is very different and can be its own kind of trauma, also an opportunity, but also a challenge. So refugees, when they come to the United States, many times cannot choose where they're going to be resettled unless they can identify family in a particular place. And so otherwise they are just going to be resettled wherever there is a space in the United States. And basically 49 out of the 50 states resettle refugees. So when they come, they arrive with very little. The families we resettled in Maine were very large, so mothers with 6, 7, 8, children that they were working with. So we were trying to help support their immediate needs with clothing, getting the children enrolled in school, helping connect them with supports in the school so they would have access to interpretation and translation as they needed it for their classwork, helping the parents increase, or the moms typically in these cases, increase their literacy and independence, empower them to know how to use their voice in these U.S. systems. We'd help them secure housing, furniture for their housing, access to health care and benefits, and really try to get them on a path to employment in a field that they were excited to be a part of. The United States, or especially Maine, is a very, very white, homogeneous state. So one of the challenges initially could be a culture shock of racism, which is a very real thing in the United States and within Maine. Working to increase public awareness about who refugees are, what their experience has been, and help them to be more accepted into the community to diversify and enrich our communities. So I started my career in the DC court system as a courtroom clerk. So, and for reference, if you've ever watched American movies, it's the all rise person. That was me. I would swear everyone in, and I would learn the processes of the court and also help individuals who are coming to the court, typically for protection from abuse, harassment orders, who were involved in cases of sexual assault or physical domestic violence cases. So for 2 years, I watched those cases day in and day out being processed by the court, and really seeing I'd say the variety of injustices that people were experiencing, and the limits of the justice system, of what it can really do for people who are in violent relationships. And I think after 2 years, I was like, okay, I've seen enough here. I need to do something with all of this energy and a little bit of frustration to try and move that energy into the more policy-related forms, to have some more long-lasting change. I was having change on a day-to-day basis, on a person-to-person basis in the court, by making sure they got the protection that they needed, but I wanted to make sure that that was something that was being addressed on a national level, that states were looking at better ways to provide and support people who were in violent situations. So that was my change from the direct service to the more public policy realm. So after I did some time in DC working on public policy, I was really intrigued to further my education, and ended up doing my master's degree overseas at the London School of Economics, and ended up doing my dissertation on the trafficking of women into the UK, kind of looking at that more extreme end of the violence against women spectrum. And I found, after I graduated with my master's, that I had an opportunity to go to Albania. I had heard there was a number of activities happening in the region. My family is ethnically Albanian, so I had an interest, an investment to go and see what was happening on the ground. And I was lucky to have the opportunity to become the anti-trafficking advisor at USA in Albania for 3.5 years. And I was working to help prevent, protect, provide assisted voluntary return and reintegration of women who were trafficked from Albania, within Albania and across its borders, as well as children who are trafficked, largely for labor, but also because of their vulnerability of being alone or on the move, they are also at very high risk for sex trafficking as well. And so that really changed my perspective on just the global dynamics of violence, I would say. And I was impressed at that time. The U.S., it was the largest bilateral investment in an anti-trafficking effort by the United States at the time. I think it was about a $7 million project and an investment looking at anti-trafficking between Albania, Italy, Greece, Macedonia, looking at all that border contact, and really trying to leverage increased political action and protection for the populations who are being exploited. It really changed how I saw the work, and I was anxious to come back to the United States and do more work in trafficking, and found that we were kind of light years ahead in terms of our investments overseas than we had been in the United States itself. We were still kind of way back at the police detection identification stage, and not at the identification, prevention, assistance, support of individuals. So it was an interesting learning curve, and now the United States is catching up, and I've been involved in that work in the state of Maine. Yeah, it's interesting because I've been going to so many wonderful pavilions here, including the USA Pavilion, and there's been so much focused on technology and sustainability. And when I think about that through my lens of the work that I do, I'm thinking like human sustainability, of how you sustain human rights of individuals, right? So it's exciting to me that there's always growth and potential to be better, whether that's technologically or towards ending climate change. All of these things are going to impact the human existence. All of those are going to continue to impact the work that I do, which is violence in general, and any kind of vulnerabilities in the population are going to increase violence and stress throughout our population. So I feel like they're all interconnected, and I have hope. I mean, it's hard work, but I always have hope that with people trying to be better, to help each other and to grow together, that things can get better. No, I just want to say thank you for a great opportunity. This was wonderful. It was wonderful to come and see all of the wonderful pavilions and exhibitions and learn more about Dubai and the UAE. And yeah, it's just been amazing. So thank you.